This meeting of the Design Adjustment Committee will now come to order. I have to read an introduction before we get started. The Design Adjustment Committee's purpose is to establish clear and measurable review criteria for the consideration of major deviations from the city's Technical Standards and Specifications Manual and subdivision standards. The Design Adjustment Committee does not consider housing type, cost of the proposed unit, occupants, building material, unit size, number of bedrooms, or the architectural design of the structures. These hearings are quasi-judicial evidentiary hearings. That means it's like a court hearing, and the committee's decisions are constrained by the standards in the ordinance and based on the facts presented. All variance requests require a 4/5 vote of the committee to grant the variance. Appeals of the committee decisions are to Superior Court. The parties to these cases are entitled to an impartial board. If a board member has a fixed opinion on the matter, a financial interest in the outcome, a close relationship with the affected person, or has had any ex parte communication about the matter, please disclose that information to determine if a recusal is necessary. City staff will introduce the proposed project to the committee, and committee members may ask questions. The applicant may present additional information about the project, and the members may ask questions. If anyone wishes to provide evidence at today's hearing, witnesses must sign in the back of the room and be sworn in. Because witnesses are to provide sworn testimony, please focus on the facts and standards, not personal preference or opinion. When a witness comes forward to give testimony, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and speak clearly. At this time, staff will administer oath for individuals who intend to provide testimony.
If I could have all staff, applicants, and members of the public who wish to speak, please stand up, raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thanks.
Our first item on the agenda is the minutes from the last meeting, November 16th. Everybody had a chance to review those. If so, okay, so you're recusing from the vote on the minutes. Okay. Any other discussion on the minutes? Any comments?
No comment.
No comment.
I'll make the motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Brings us to the first item of business, which is Helmsdale Phase 2.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. The subject property is currently zoned R20L, which is a residential legacy district. It contains approximately 32 acres, and it's within the Landfall Master Plan development area. In December of 2015, the Wilmington Subdivision Review Board approved a preliminary plan for this subdivision for a 33-lot single-dwelling subdivision with private streets, utility extension, stormwater management facilities, and open space dedication. On January of 2018, construction plans for this project were released. The project was never completed. However, a number of infrastructure improvements were completed, and the project remains vested. The applicant has requested to modify the approved preliminary plan to allow for 2 of the approved street connections within the subdivision to be closed and a cul-de-sac turnaround be provided. They're asking for relief from the maximum length of a cul-de-sac street and then relief from the street connectivity requirements for external streets adjacent to a subdivision. The Land Development Code stipulates that longer cul-de-sac lengths may be authorized if the Design Adjustment Committee determines there's no option for providing stub streets or connectivity due to existing documented environmental features such as wetlands, natural water bodies, topographical features, environmental conditions, or physical conditions of the property. The Land Development Code also stipulates that a design adjustment may be requested to allow deviations from the subdivision standards in Article 6 of the Land Development Code and the Technical Standards Manual. That is all staff has at this time. Happy to answer any questions you might have, and the applicant is here available for questions as well. And I would like to enter my staff report as part of the record.
Okay, I have a question. Prior to 2015, did this go to SRB or have any previous approvals?
I do not believe so. The applicant might have additional history on it, but I could not find any.
Okay, when I was doing research, it looked like they got SRB approval in 2005
Okay,
as well.
I did not find that, so I apologize.
That's fine. Did you see, were there any variances approved with the SRB approval?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, so it was just approval by the SRB? Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Does the applicant wish to present? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I appreciate your time this afternoon. I am the applicant for this project. My name is Jordy Rawl. My address is 1722 Kennedy Road here in Wilmington, North Carolina. And the reason this is before you this afternoon is we have taken into great consideration the layout of how this phase interjects with the overall master plan of the landfall community. It is the last large tract left to be developed. I am the site contractor, and while we've been working on the infrastructure within the community, we've noticed several things relative to this 33-lot project that would enhance the overall community's benefit if this design exception was made. Couple quick points. Helmsdale, which is located at the top left of your screen, interjects with Arboretum Drive. And relative to speed within the landfall community, that is a very highly trafficked area. And there became some concerns and questions from neighboring property owners about the connection point back to South Moorings Drive, which is the connection we're asking relief from, where the cul-de-sac is found at South Moorings at the bottom right of the screen. And general concerns were just labeled, people did not adhere to the speed limit. Obviously, City of Wilmington Police do not regularly monitor within the landfall area. They don't control or have jurisdiction over the speed limits, and there's just a general concern about once this project opened, how that was going to affect the traffic flow into the communal nodes within landfall. And with some discussion between the Landfall Council of Association, the property owner, and the surrounding property owners, we felt that this was a compromise to the situation that some of the surrounding property owners arose as a concern, which was, heavy traffic coming off of that main artery of Arboretum Drive and then finding a quicker connection path back to South Moorings. As of now, the traffic flow and pattern of the community all work and function as intended. We obviously are cognizant of concerns with fire and emergency rescue EMS. So if you look at the cul-de-sac and can zoom in on the detail either on your computer or on your printout, we are proposing a connection point with either bollards or a decorative knockbox gate to connect from South Moorings back onto back onto Helmsdale. And the intent of that would be to almost suffice as a little bit of a pocket park. You've got an area that is undelineated, or the area has been delineated for wetland. There is an area that was non-jurisdictional right there where that cul-de-sac node comes out. And the intent would be just to provide stamped concrete at a 4,000 PSI plus wire mesh so that there's no issues with heavier vehicular traffic from an emergency response perspective. And so that if there was ever a need for emergency vehicles to enter that area, it would be without any concern to that driver of that vehicle. They'd be able to traverse across the decorative concrete area and come into the Helmsdale community from South Moorings if they needed to, or if they needed a connection point from Arboretum Drive back onto South Moorings Drive, that would be continued to be open as a emergency access point. We also have noted several species of wildlife that traverse the area to the left of the screen where those markings from 404 wetlands have been delineated that come back into the intersection there at Winchester. There's a 5-acre conservation area that's shown in that large rectangular block, and you can see as the wetlands come down from the headwaters of Howell Creek behind the lots on the left-hand side, that is seemingly a major thoroughfare, if you will, for whitetails, fox, coyotes. They come down that area for water at the creek head, and then they cross where Winchester is through those 3 larger lots in that wetlands area to bed down in the conservation area located in that rectangular shape center of the screen. And so we're looking for this relief for the surrounding community members. We're looking for the relief for the wildlife that's become accustomed to using this area for means of ingress and egress from the conservation area down to the wetlands headwater area. And we have received no issues from surrounding community members. They've actually lent their support. And if I could enter into the record, I've got a letter from the Council of Association, which represents all the property owners within Landfall, with their unanimous support for this design adjustment to be granted. So if allowed, Mr. Chairman, I would like to submit this letter to legal for your records.
Mr. Chair, you can receive it. I just advise the committee that since it's a letter from folks outside who aren't under oath, just give it the weight that you consider appropriate, since it's not sworn testimony. Thank you.
What's your pleasure? Would you
Yeah,
like a
we can
copy?
accept it. Is there more than one copy, or is it just the one copy? Okay. Okay, there's 3 and there's 5 of us. So you get to share. You guys get to share. Signature, did they vote on? Okay, so they voted on it at their December, wait.
I believe it was an unregularly scheduled meeting that they adopted a motion to make this approval.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
If later determined water main interconnections through these deleted road interconnections were determined to be necessary, would that be prevented by the action here?
It would not be, and we have actually already made those connections for water and sewer.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. So you're talking about environmental concerns. Has that changed from the last approval back in 2017? I'm just not understanding why this is just now coming forward, your concerns.
Because this property is now just being developed.
Well, I understand that, but again, so you're saying that you have received expert surveys and such that show that this is an environmental issue? Like I said, I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
No, ma'am, we've not received any expert testimony, but from being on site daily with, we have trail cameras out for protection against vandalism or theft of the machinery or equipment. We've noted several species of wildlife that utilize the area, most particularly to the left of the screen, where you can see the hatch line where the wetlands comes down those backside of those lots. That's the headwater to Howell Creek. Mm-hmm. There's a large buffer in between what council approved to be the avenue, the backside of these lots, and that wetland area down in that hard bottom swamp. That wildlife utilizes the backside of those lots, and then they traverse, from what we've witnessed on our camera system, they come to the southeast, come down around where you would see lot 34, 35, and they cross where that wetlands area is around lot 41, 42. The large rectangular area that you see where the sharp curvature to the road is, that's actually deeded property to the New Hanover County Conservational Area. That's a 5-acre wildlife conservation area. And so my point to the wildlife is that seems to be the area that they utilize to access their areas where they bed down, they sleep at night, rest during the afternoons, and come down for water to the headwaters of the creek. So part of the concern that we had relative to the land, and a lot of this property maintains very large lot sizes, on average around 3/4 acres plus, is to leave the area as a little bit of a conservatory, if you will, and at least give the opportunity for that wildlife to continue to track the paths that they've set up to utilize water from the headwater of the creek, and then the areas to bed down where the rectangular shape for the conservation area is. So it was one of our noted observations, and part of what we wanted to try and establish this community once built out to be is somewhere where you are able to have whitetail in your backyard, you are able to have different species of wildlife that can still access their scripted means of transportation from a walkability standpoint. And if that road is open and it becomes heavily traveled, there is a concern that their walkability from that bedding area back down to the headwaters of the creek would be severed.
Can you explain, I don't know if we have any ability to point, where is the headwaters of the creek that you're talking about exactly? Because
Do you have a laser pointer or anything that I can, can you draw on this map or?
Yeah, we can see your cursor.
Okay, I don't have control of that.
Who is that? Is that Brian?
But he is guiding, that is the headwaters of the creek that he's outlining there,
And where is the conservation area you're speaking of?
right there,
Okay.
yes.
And how do they get from there through?
So can I drive this, Brian, or can you, if you hook down around where the hard curve in South Moorings is, Brian? Yes, sir. So come down through there, yep. So right across that wetlands area, back down, and you can see where the, where he just highlighted to the left portion of the page. That's all a nexus of connectivity from, it's a hard bottom swamp with large, cypress. It comes down the backside. There's a lot of elevation on those lots. So when it falls off into that hard bottom, and this is not the best exhibit to illustrate that, but where that property line is shown, where that wetlands hatch line is, it's probably triple that width all the way across to the backside of where the avenues is. So where you see that X to the left-hand side of the page right there, that's probably the middle of the wetlands, if you will, the middle of the headwaters to Howe Creek.
Okay. And how exactly would eliminating the connections improve that? I mean, there's still a road crossing it. Would they go under the bridge?
It's more of a maintainability standpoint from our opinion, that if you don't put as many vehicular trips on that road a day, that you don't have people utilizing that road for a thoroughfare, that it's going to give an opportunity to that wildlife to continue to access the paths that they have established over time with this property being undeveloped.
And would this connection that you're asking for, would the gate, I don't know, would it be bollards? Would it be gates? Would the residents have the ability to come and go through those gates, but just not the outside landfall residents?
So it would be, and again, the maintainability of how landfall and the city interact is still a little bit of, I guess, a mystery, but it would be to the COA to vote on what accessibility they would allow, whether it would be bollards or a knockbox, but there would be that stopgap for regular vehicular traffic to come into the community. It would just be for emergency access.
Okay, so the residents of Helmsdale would not have the ability to leave out South Moorings, or what is that, towards Regency Court area, isn't that right?
Correct. And there's really no direction for them to travel in that way to get out of landfall. It would be in and out of Arboretum Drive. And then if they wanted to come back down Arboretum, it's the same distance as if they would take a left there at South Moorings to connect back to Arboretum. Arboretum is the main thoroughfare through the community.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
I'm just elaborating on these emergency access. They haven't made a decision as to how you're going to protect that. I know you've mentioned bollards and you mentioned Knox box, but the fire department is the only one that has keys for a Knox box. Law enforcement and EMS do not have Knox box keys. So are they proposing gates? Are they proposing, for the fire department to get into landfall after hours, and they're not going through a guarded access as you would have off of Eastwood Road. Their entryway for the fire department is either by having a scan key on the side of their trucks that the camera will pick up on them to be able to lift the guard gates or to be siren activated. Are they proposing the same type of arrangement for this? Because I know when you say EMS is emergency services is broad. Fire department, we have one way of getting in, and sometimes the fire department's way of getting in is not going to be very favorable to a lot of other people. And so, I'm concerned about granted, Arboretum Drive would be the main entry for everybody coming in there. But if you're dedicating these as emergency access, then you're going to have to account for all type of emergency vehicles, not only the fire department, to be able to access that. And that's going to have to be addressed. That's satisfactory to, that's going to be one size fits all.
Yes, sir. And your earlier comment about their current technology to allow for all the broadened scope of emergency access, that is what technology we would implement for these access points. The same.
And thank you, I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
I don't know how the after-hours gates are for police department or EMS. I know that the responding engine companies that can go there off of military cutoff versus there do have the scans on that like the residents do. Some kind of provision is going to have to be provided of being able to have all emergency vehicles be able to have universal access through there. And the Knox box by itself is not going to be meeting the qualifications for that.
Yes, sir. And I'll take responsibility for not having the terminology correct. Whatever that access that is currently utilized for all services of emergency access will be the same technology used for the access points at these two locations.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Just a couple of observations, just
Yes, sir.
Based on what you said. I mean, you're making a point of trying to maintain the area for the wildlife because I'm understanding they cross
Yes,
the road
sir.
that you plan to construct around that very wide. Just observationally, is this site plan set in stone? Is this what's going to get built, the lot layout and everything? Has that been decided 100%? It will not change?
So two things real quick. The wildlife is a portion of what we're trying to do. The main thing really is eliminate fast vehicular access for people to create an opportunity to speed between Arboretum and South Mornings Drive. That's kind of first and foremost. Two, the lots they're not platted, but they are going to be platted as such, and the only change that we're really seeking is this roadway connection point.
Okay, so the street layout, the projected traffic of landfall, and all of that stuff has been decided, like was mentioned years ago. All of this interconnectivity was previously planned. To me, it seems like if you were wanting to accomplish that and protect the wildlife, that there should be some cul-de-sac or road blockage prior to that wetland on both sides of that wetland. You would have two cul-de-sac streets rather than just one, but to preserve that natural crossing for the wildlife.
If it is the pleasure of this adjustment committee and we could have relief for two cul-de-sacs, we would gladly accept that. We just want to limit the vehicular flow through this particular section of landfall. And it was approved in 2005 before a majority of landfall was built out. This piece of property was originally not in the annexation of landfall. It was annexed at a later point. And so it's sort of bolted on. It's closer to military cutoff road. And so your question about why was this not thought of at an earlier point is certainly fair. It's just this being the last developed section that was really acquired land that was then annexed into landfall, come into fruition in 2022 versus 2005. Things have obviously changed around landfall and the city. So there's a larger number of vehicles that traverse the community at this point than I believe was originally calculated.
And I was just referencing the internal intersections within landfall. All of that's been laid out.
Yes, sir.
And this was included in that. So my other observation just coming in, that just came out during the meeting about the wildlife. And it seems like if you're going to do something excessive, think about it, eliminate the wildlife from the equation. But the second part was the cul-de-sac that's shown at the northern end of this property. Just from the traffic standpoint, if you're trying to reduce the amount of cut-through traffic, I mean, everybody lives in landfalls, allowed to use their private streets that they pay HOA fees on. If you were to flip-flop where that cul-de-sac is, instead of having the intersection in the curve along Arboretum, if you were to have the intersecting, if that cul-de-sac were to extend through to Arboretum and intersect it on the tangent part, and the through street that's shown now, if that were your cul-de-sac, it would introduce another turn in the road to make it less convenient. The interconnectivity would still be there, but it would be less convenient for that internal usage. That's kind of the idea I had coming into the meeting. Like, if this lot layout has been set in stone and is not going to change, then that's not an option. But
And
just
that is the case.
Okay.
The lot layout is set in stone. We, as Mr. McSmith asked earlier, what about connectivity to utilities? Those have been done. So a lot of that was dictated upon how the utilities within the community were going to lay out where these wetland road crossings were, et cetera, et cetera.
I was just trying to find an alternate way to still allow the interconnectivity without substantially, I don't know how substantial that would be to change or to consider changing. But,
And one consideration to kind of tailor into your comment is allowing for at least slowed vehicular traffic, maybe through a gate there at Winchester, so that people could still come down through Helmsdale off of Arboretum and then take a right into a more neighborhood section of landfall, if you will, because South Morens is just another thoroughfare to interconnect the rest of the neighborhood. And so, again, the large concern of what we're before you today is to try and eliminate that as a cut-through road, if you will. And it is something that the neighbors and the community and the property owners are all, respectively wishing to be fulfilled. So I don't know if these meetings can be conditioned or not, but we'd be open to allowing slowed vehicular traffic through Winchester to the rest of the community, but just, having that opportunity to gate it where people have to come and they're forced to a stop, to where it's not as much a convenience matter if somebody's running late for something and they just want to use this neighborhood's road as a cut through between thoroughfares is really the larger concern. You can't, once it's built, you can't really do anything about regulation as far as what speed somebody's going to maintain through these roadways. And if they're coming on it's 30 down Arboretum, but people typically do 45 to 50, and the same on South Mooring. So the large concern is, hey, if we connect this road in between two roads where people seem to maintain speeds between 45 and 50, and this is a quaint neighborhood that we like to keep at 25 or less, what's that going to do to this from a convenience matter for someone just to abuse this road and speed to get out of the gates of landfall? And that's
has there been an official speed study done?
Yeah.
There's not been a traffic study, but I have swept a lot of rock out of Arboretum Drive, out of the temporary construction entrance, and I can tell you, it's well above the speed limit.
I had the same thought, Dennis. The connectivity is a major part of the comprehensive plan. Interconnectivity, we have traffic calming as policy in our comp plan as well. We also have, under street systems, 2.2.2, new residential, commercial, and mixed-use developments that require construction or extension of roadways shall include a multimodal network. The use of cul-de-sacs and dead-end streets shall be minimized. You know, so I'm seeing this again and again in the comprehensive plan, that, you know, we want this connectivity. You know, there are other ways to mitigate the, you know, speeds. Again, that, you know, traffic calming is a big portion of that. So I had very similar thoughts as you.
And if I may observe, as is relative to the comp plan, I mean, Landfall is a private community, so it's not helping with connectivity in a regularly maintained area within the city. And it is a legacy track that has been R20, you know, well before the comp plan was established. And so,
Sure, and I understand that, but I mean, the comp plan is still an important document and one that I'm not seeing referenced in your narrative, and I don't see any other plans. So like I said, I just wanted to bring that to the attention.
if I will, the comprehensive plan really does not label landfall, because landfall's not really, I mean, there's not developable acreage or the opportunity for redevelopment like other areas of the city of Wilmington. So this really, landfall itself, you know, falls outside of the comprehensive plan for all respective matters.
I understand your position.
Okay.
Like I said, I definitely am just looking at some of the requirements for the findings of fact. It specifically requests item number 2, the request conforms with the adopted comprehensive plan and other applicable plans. So I just wanted to share that with my other board members.
Okay.
All right, I got to get the public hearing going on this. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We're going to open the public hearing on this issue for 10 minutes. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. As I do on most, I'm going to confirm we have 2 waivers to consider. Are we approving the overall plan, or has that already been approved? Brian, Amy, Sean? Are we considering, I guess is a better word?
Just the 2 in front of you.
Just the 2 waivers?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion amongst the board on either of the 2 waivers? They're obviously related.
Got a question for the attorney. Sean,
Yes, sir.
being private right-of-ways, correct?
Correct.
Do we have the ability to even make a condition on any kind of traffic treatment on a private right-of-way?
The plan would have to go back through TRC, would it not, to approve these connections should we approve the variances?
Right,
Or
they would have to modify the approved construction plans, and as you know, a private street has to be built to public standards, so even though it's private, if you approve a variance, you can conditionally approve a variance,
Okay.
based on
they would come back
whatever
if-
need you see exists.
If we did condition it to do something else, they could just show us that something else on those revised plans?
Correct.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, I mean, I don't know where I stand on this. I don't know what everybody else does. I mean, I don't really see a true hardship here to make the connections. I mean, it was approved by SRB with the connections in '05. It was approved again with the connections in 2015. There's no public here to voice any opposition to this as a cut-through. It seems like it's more, a concern. When I was looking at it, on an aerial, I could definitely see how, potentially some people in the South Moorings area could potentially use this as a cut-through, but I wouldn't necessarily say that this would become the thoroughfare for all of Landfall. And I think, to be consistent with the comp plan and the land development code, I don't feel like this level of interconnectivity is posing a safety hazard. And furthermore, I mean, there's nothing preventing the applicant from, adding some additional or proposing some additional traffic calming
I agree.
to help, slow some vehicles down, or even do what Dennis was suggesting about, reorienting some of the roads to provide a more inconvenient cut through. I mean, it's a form of traffic calming, I guess. I don't know. I just don't know that there's enough here for me to support it, but I don't know where everybody else stands.
I think I agree with you that, yeah,
I agree as well.
I would have difficulty.
Okay. Do we have a motion of any kind?
I'll make a motion to deny request number 2,
Okay.
to remove that, which is requesting to remove 2 previously approved street connections. I think the connections have been a long-standing design of this community, and I don't see any topographical, nothing new has come forward other than the observation of some wildlife in the area to deter those connections.
I'm going to second that. Any other discussion? All in favor of denying the motion? Do we have to vote on that? Is that how
Aye.
it works? Okay. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so that motion does not pass. So that leads us to the maximum length of a cul-de-sac, which is a very similar issue. I mean, if the connections are required, the cul-de-sac requirement would effectively
Go away.
go away. So, I mean, on those grounds, being similar to what was the motion that was made previously, I'm gonna make the motion to deny the variance for the maximum length of a cul-de-sac.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion was also denied.
And Mr. Chairman, I have to recuse myself from number 2.
From number 2,
From number 2.
I'm sorry, Abby, can you say that into the mic for the
Yes.
record?
Yes, I have to recuse myself from item number 2.
Please note that we'll have Nicole Smith come and take Abby Bonavac's place.
thank you. Okay, we have a staff presentation on the second item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. This is item number 2, the Barclay West North project. This is located at 3152 South 17th Street. It contains approximately 143.9 acres. This request is for preliminary plan approval and design adjustments for the dedication of new streets. And this is for a multi-dwelling development. It's currently zoned. The parcels in question as part of the development are MD10 CD, multi-dwelling conditional district, and MD17 multi-dwelling conditional district. There are also parcels located to the south through the proposed right-of-ways that are zoned RB, CD, and O&I CD as well to the west. This is the proposed preliminary plan showing the right-of-ways and the site accesses. This plan and development was approved by City Council on August 2nd, 2022. This was a conditional district rezoning for this site. The MD10 portion of the site, known as the Hamlet, includes 170 single-dwelling units. That also includes 7 duplexes and 96 townhomes. The MD17 portion of the site, which is entitled the Mosby, is located further to the east. On this map is shown as the Track 2, near Access 2. This is a multi-dwelling apartment site containing 290 multi-dwelling apartments. As mentioned, there are the two accesses shown on your plan, one on Independence Boulevard and one on South 17th Street. There was a TIA associated with this project that was approved on August 23rd, 2022, which is included in your attachments as well. The applicant is requesting adjustments that are listed on your screen. There are 7 that are proposed. I'll briefly highlight all of them. They are the relief from the maximum length of a driveway, a private driveway, relief from the standard cross-section for a non-residential collector street, relief from the standard cross-section for a residential street. This is the Newkirk Avenue emergency access. Relief from the standard cross-section for a residential collector street, this being Pattison Street, extending from Newkirk to 17th. Relief from the minimum tangent length between horizontal curves, relief from the maximum 3-lane driveway width at a property line, that would be along 17th, relief from the maximum 2-lane driveway width at a property line on Independence. If the DAC elects to approve the design adjustments requested today and approve the preliminary plan, staff recommends the conditions outlined in your case summary. I ask that my case summary be entered into the record, and I'm available to answer any questions that you have, and the applicant is here as well to provide a presentation.
Pat, number 4, release from standard cross-section for residential collector street, Pattinson Street.
Yep.
That's the one, Newkirk to 17th. Is that an actual street? Because it's shown as differently than the others on this, or is that just like a drive aisle through track 2?
I believe that is supposed to be a private drive aisle that is being proposed to more of a collector street standard.
So it's going to look and feel like a
Right.
collector street, but it's going to...
Yeah, essentially function as an easement, a private driveway or private easement.
Now, are track 1 and track 2 different developers, or is this all being currently sort of proposed for development by one?
I'll defer to the applicant to answer that
certain.
one. I'm
Okay.
not
Yep.
certain on that.
Okay. That's all I had. Any other questions for Pat?
And just so I'm clear, Pat, so number 4 is the little stub area, I should say, from Newkirk to that roundabout? Is that where we're talking about?
It's 3, right?
Or is that 3?
That, I believe, was number 3.
Number 3, okay.
And then Pattinson, the one I was asking about from Access 2 is number 4.
That dash line that goes from that roundabout east to 17th.
And do you know why they're being proposed as public access easements instead of roadways?
I would defer to the applicant on the reasoning. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Does the applicant wish to speak?
Good afternoon, Dan Fisk from Paramount Engineering. Pat's a little bit taller than me. 122 Cinnamon Drive. Can I pull that up somewhere on here? As Pat mentioned, this is part of Barclay West, the northern part of Independence. It was part of a master redevelopment plan that included what was to the south too. Also what is now the Point element at Barclay, Midtown Park. As mentioned, there's 3 different projects with this, all under one development arm. They'll be developed concurrently with each other, with two different owning entities of the 2 multifamily developments as they come on. Tract 1 in purple being the element at Barclay, which is a single-family residential style with multiple rental units under one owner, one big tract. It's a 30-acre tract. Tract 2 being the Mosby, which is more of a traditional multifamily development, 20 acres in itself. I have some overall plans for both the Hamlet and the Mosby to refer to as we have questions or talk in brief to go back and forth on. And then I'll have some cross-sections and other examples that we can work through on those street sections themselves. So I think what's best is probably if I go through all requested variance items in order and kind of point to where they are to get a better understanding. So design adjustment number 1 would be length of private driveway. The 500-800 rule applies to both larger tracts in general, as they're a 30-acre piece and a 20-acre piece. It would be impossible to meet the 500-800 rule without further subdividing both of those tracts with public right-of-ways or right-of-ways themselves. To combat this, we provided multiple interconnected driveway networks that have multiple ingress-egress points themselves and make it so that no stub section is greater than or equal to a 500-foot length. And the interior drive networks themselves have been designed sufficiently to provide adequate access to both residents, public service, and the public safety vehicles. That kind of shows you on the Mosby side too, the difference in length throughout the whole project and multiple interconnectivity. For item number 2, relative to the public road non-residential collector, we're talking about Barclay West, which is what we commonly refer to as the Horseshoe Road on our side, which is the main public infrastructure road that provides the access, as you can see. The road itself is designed to have a greater right-of-way than the minimum standards, so the conditions for that aren't the main items being asked. What is being asked is it has been designed to be similar to the layout and the cross-section of Gallery Park Boulevard, which is what it connects to at the Independence Boulevard street intersection, which is designed with multiple lanes and a large median, with the median in question being the main point of emphasis to be able to provide better aesthetics for the property. And if I can go to a couple examples of what that cross-section looks like. Both, the top left is kind of your standard cross-section with the one ingress, one egress at the points where that occurs. The top right is the 4 lanes of egress, 1 lane of ingress at the Independence Boulevard intersection per the TIA requirements. And then there's the 80-foot right-of-way section, which is between, if I can go back, I can point it to you better. 80-foot right-of-way section, which kind of falls between the 2 roundabouts that abut Tract 1 or the Hamlet Purple piece. But it's still a similar cross-section, just a smaller right-of-way, but greater than what the standard is. And then the final is where a left turn lane is proposed for one of the driveways to the Hamlet.
So Dan, just so I'm clear, sorry.
Yes.
So from Independence, it's 100 feet through the first roundabout, 100 feet to the second roundabout, and then it becomes 80?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yes. And then it's 80 to, further clarify, it's 80 to that third roundabout, and then the proposed right-of-way from the third roundabout back to Independence is currently being designed or projected to be a 100-foot right-of-way. Okay. So that 80-foot portion would only be that one section we're mentioning. And if you have more questions as we go along, feel free to jump in too. Number 3 is relative to the cross-section for the emergency access. Emergency access is kind of shown at the top left of this page near that roundabout connecting to Hanover Heights. As part of the original rezoning approval, there's a condition for that access to be limited to emergency vehicles and pedestrians, and this was carried through with the most recent rezoning that was approved this year. We're providing a typical 18-foot asphalt with ribbon curb on both sides, so a 20-foot section through that 60-foot easement with a pedestrian sidewalk on what is the western side. We are not proposing sidewalk on the eastern side in order to preserve additional trees and buffers relative to a more higher dense buffer area that's being proposed for this Mosby piece along that northern property line.
I guess that'll
And that'll tie into the cross-section for Pattison Street too.
Brings me to my question I asked Pat. Is there any reason that's being proposed as an easement rather than a right-of-way with only a certain amount of it paved?
Talking about Paddington?
For Pattison
or the
Street.
connection?
Or the
The
emergency.
Newkirk. Since there's an existing Newkirk right-of-way, explain why that right-of-way would not extend down.
I think that's just what was carried through relative to the original layout. On that one relative to the emergency access, I don't know that it would be an issue if that 60-foot were subdivided out as a right-of-way. As opposed to the Pattison, we were providing that as an easement, as the right-of-way would, in essence, cut off the piece of the major development parcel with multiple property lines. So the easement allows for the maintenance through the POA for the whole development to create a cohesive design and maintain it in the way that they want to for the community.
Dan, do you mind if we ask you questions while you're in the middle?
Sure.
It's
Yeah,
kind of
that's
like
fine.
if I hold my questions till the end, I'm going to forget them, so I apologize for interrupting you. But I had a question also about the Newkirk connection. What does that, I guess you just showed up a cross-section there that's going to show a paved connection to Newkirk. How is that going to prevent vehicular access but allow pedestrian access? What's that going to look like? Is there going to be a gate? Are there going to be bollards?
Sure,
What's
there's
going to prevent a car from using that
Right.
and connecting through to Newkirk?
The current proposal is for a gate, and similar to what came up before, it would be a device to allow for all emergency access through that gate, and that's being worked through with TRC review concurrently.
But it would be open for bikes and pedestrians somehow to not be gated, is that correct?
Correct. My understanding is the gate would only be over the asphalt portion. There would be no gate relative to the sidewalk.
Okay. Thank you. You can go on, sorry. I think you were on 4.
Yes. So Pattison Street, the private easement, has designed again, there's a landscape median in between the ingress egress points through part of it, and then it's also proposed as a 28-foot cross-section for the 2-lane portion. As mentioned, relative to an easement design. And this is for the portion from, as kind of mentioned before too, from the roundabout at Newkirk to 17th Street. And then we're also requesting a variance relative to the 100-foot minimum tangent length, which is the area highlighted in red on this slide. And that is being proposed as slightly less than, I think it's around 73 feet, slightly less than 100 feet, in order to preserve or make the radii work in order to preserve the multiple tree areas where you can see both interior near the trash compactor and on the exterior side with that enhanced buffer area, passive land development area. And then we're also proposing with this cross-section not to include a sidewalk on the northern side where that passive tree protection area is as well, to limit how much disturbance and everything would happen near those trees. But the full sidewalk section would be provided from the Newkirk roundabout to 17th Street on the southern side, where all the development would be.
The blue are the specimen trees?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Driveway width at the property line, we've called this out relative to the easement Pattison Street connection at 17th Street with the street style connection and the radii, and then the landscape island in between. It causes that additional footage needed at the right-of-way line. And then the last one, driveway width at property lines for the other driveways, if I can go back to an overall. Again, we're providing street style connections at all points. The street style connections, unlike the traditional city standard apron flare detail, causes the radii to kind of extend past beyond what the right-of-way point is. So if you measure directly at the right-of-way, those widths are wider than the travelway itself, which causes the greater width than needed for this project as well.
Okay.
And then I have, at the very back end, some examples of the southern side that's been developed where street-style driveway connections have been done behind the theater and along to Midtown Park. And then the point is an example of development with access easements throughout it as well. that are kind of in place.
Any other questions?
On those other access easements, I think we can see your cursor when you, which of those streets are access easements?
There it is. So pretty much everything, so if you're familiar with oh, sorry, apparently I clicked.
There we go.
So the bottom of the image is Gallery Park Boulevard. Everything to the north of that is private access easements.
Wasn't it, at one time, wasn't it proposed as right-of-way and it was changed to easements?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So the road with the roundabout in front of that commercial area, that's a private access easement,
That is correct.
and its connection to Independence Boulevard?
That is correct.
Okay.
And they're still maintained as, obviously, major streets with any access for any vehicle to go through, which would be the similar case to what Pattison Street would be.
Would you happen to know the roadway that enters the Element, the residential side of this, is that an easement or a right-of-way?
Those are right-of-way, aren't they? The Element?
I believe there's a portion of that that is a right-of-way. But I do not know fully off the top of my head. I think Hanover Design did that project instead of.
Yeah, we officially
myself.
accepted those. So I think most of the roads within the Element apartments are public right-of-way now. I mean, there's some internal parking areas, but
Yes.
any other questions for the applicant?
We'll start with number one. Length of driveway, it says you're proposing 2,000 feet. Could you just draw on there where you were measuring that from, just so I can?
Sure. So since the Barclay Boulevard will ultimately be the public street, and until the future development phase for the connection is, we don't have technically a through road at this point in time. So when you do a max length from that Barclay Boulevard throughout Tract 1, or if you do it from 17th Street throughout Tract 2, it falls within that 2,000 feet parameter.
What is the name of the road between Track 1 and Track 5? Is that Barclay?
No, that would be,
I can't read that here. I don't know if it has a name yet.
I think it does. I think it started with a B. I don't remember off the top
Okay,
of my head.
that road. Where's that going to connect?
Poles, yeah.
It'll ultimately, future connection up relative to the old master design plan that goes to Carolina Beach Road. I think it connects to an off-street before that and then ties to Carolina Beach Road with that master plan.
Okay, so what is that? Parkway, I guess it is. So it'll eventually connect up and with the Parkway.
Yes.
Okay.
Like I think it's the Luna Vista Drive area and then the Parkway to Carolina Beach Road on the left.
Okay. And the road that's between Tract 1 and Tract 3, that's not proposed to be built with Mosby and Hamlet?
No, not at this time. It's being designed and laid out for when it comes online.
Can you tell me or describe to me the, I guess, development? You said that the infrastructure, Tract 1 and Tract 2, are being developed concurrently. Is there a scenario where Tract 1 develops and Tract 2 does not, or vice versa?
No, because they're being developed by the same arm, the same company. So
they'll be the same property owner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it'll be separate property owners in the end, but underneath the same developer arm, yes.
Yeah, because I think that was my, I don't really have a lot of problems with most of these, but that was the question that I had, is like, what happens if, you've got a pretty significant deviation from the 5/8, and, you've got some future connections, proposed, as the horseshoe loops back to, I don't know how much that really helps you, but I mean, and then, of course, when the B road is, I can't remember what the name was, when that connects back to Parkway, you'll have some better connectivity, but all that's dependent upon future and other parties. So if that doesn't happen, you've got a situation where this is sort of sitting on an island far from anything else. You don't even have a vehicular connection back to Newkirk. So I'm just trying to make sure that we can establish connectivity from the get-go.
Understood.
That was my sort of concern.
So just to continue my thought process, once all of what we see on the screen, the track 3, 4, and 5 are done, there will not be any private street longer than 500 feet? Is that what we're saying here? That this is just a temporary condition where?
No, I'm saying relative to a larger 30-acre tract and 20-acre tract, you're going to have, with a single owner portion, you're going to have the greater than 500, 800 foot rule apply. It just won't be as dramatic as initially kind of mentioned.
It won't be 2,000 feet.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So the road that's shown through the Hamlet tract with on-street parallel parking, that's
all
not
in-
going to be a public road?
Correct. That's all internal drive set up through the private owner.
I don't have any concerns with the internal circulation of each of these tracks. I mean, I think they're laid out pretty well.
Yeah.
It was more of the sequencing and phasing of the infrastructure that I had some concerns with. Is there, we do have to open the public hearing. Is there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, I can't promise I won't bring you back up here.
That's
but
fine. Thank you. I'd be happy to come back up if I need.
Okay. With that, I will open the public hearing. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to speak on this issue? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. I believe we have the 6 variances, 7 variances, and the overall preliminary, or the overall plan to approve.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to provide a little information, if I could, on that Newkirk connection that was previously discussed. I think the intention was that would be a standard cross, it would be a standard right-of-way width, but the cross-section would match what is existing at Newkirk. And the idea there was that staff's position was that would be connected short of, providing the gate to limit vehicular traffic. But when this went through the process, I think the intention was staff wanted that to have the ability to be opened if the neighborhood to the north ever decided that they wanted that connection. So we wanted to have it be laid out similar to Newkirk, save the gate. I just wanted to point that out because I think what they've asked for is a 20-foot wide right-of-way, which is a little unusual for the cross-section. And it's when you look at the plan, it shows a 20-foot wide pavement width.
Okay.
So there's a little confusion on our part as to what they're proposing, but I think from a staff's point of view, we want to see a connection there with the gate that limits vehicular traffic, but long-term, we wanted to make sure we protected the opportunity for that road connection to be made if that neighborhood wanted it in the future.
Isn't there a code provision that prohibits gates on public right-of-way, though?
That would be my next question. I don't know how we get around that, if at all, but we just wanted it laid out to where it could be, that road connection could be made. So if it has to stay in some other form of ownership before that happens, I guess that's fine, but we just wanted to make sure that that opportunity existed in the future.
Okay.
Should that opportunity present itself, would we be purchasing land would we be purchasing the right-of-way down to that roundabout?
I don't know. If they can dedicate some form of easement that the city could then dedicate the right-of-way to make the connection, if 20 years from now that neighborhood wants to connect, which our main goal is we want to make sure that that neighborhood connect vehicular in the future if they wanted to do it. I think right now they don't want to cut through traffic, but that might change, and I don't want, the future residents to not ever have the ability to make that connection.
Correct.
Okay, we can talk about that maybe scenario when we get to it. Okay. I don't know how you guys want to tackle these items. There's a lot of them. I don't know whether you want to pluck some low-hanging fruit or if you want to just start with number 1 and work our way down. To my mind, the easiest one to support is number 2, the non-residential collector street right-of-way width and the non-standard right-of-way width. They're providing in excess of what is required matching Gallery Park Boulevard, which I don't, short of a little bit peculiar roundabout design, I think it's functioned pretty well. Did anybody review those cross-sections, have any concerns with waiver number 2?
I do not. No.
Any other discussion on that one? Okay. We're at the point where we've already had public hearing. Okay, so we can vote on this. So I'm going to make the motion to approve variance number 2, the non-residential collector street right-of-way width, and I guess it's the non-standard cross-section as well, to remain consistent with, if it's in excess of the technical standard requirement, and to remain consistent with Gallery Park Boulevard.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so variance 2 is approved. What is y'all's thoughts on?
I know we just beat it to death, Brian, but that variance number 3, the way it's worded in the staff report is residential collector street right-of-way width. It's required to be 60, and they're proposing 20. Is that, just re-clarify that again, that it's not, they're not asking for 20-foot right-of-way. They're asking for a 60-foot public access easement with
Yeah,
a
with the
matching
cross-section.
asphalt of Newkirk? Maybe
Their request is for a 20-foot wide emergency access cross section. I don't know if we get into whether it's actual right-of-way in the request or an easement, so we got to mull our way through this one to figure out how we,
I think if there's a gate, the easement might be the better way to go if that's the desire of the current residents there, and it was mentioned in the CD rezoning because of the land development code condition prohibiting gates. Is that, Dan, is that acceptable, or?
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I'd also bring to point that the city will also have, relative to that 60-foot easement, the rework that we're working through on the drainage easement too, so there will be city entitlement to that too, if that helps the situation.
Oh,
as
that's
a
right,
whole in the
because isn't
future,
there,
too.
is
So
there,
there's-
can you bring up a
there's-
site plan?
There's
Brian?
a current drainage easement that kind of comes through that area that will get, I don't know if it fully pops up, I don't know that it fully pops up on this one, but there's a current drainage easement that extends from Newkirk and comes down through where track 3 is.
And will that drainage cut through the Hamlet tract, or will it follow one of the rights-of-way?
We're proposing it to follow the Newkirk rights-of-way, so it'd be through that 60-foot emergency access easement and then through the public portion of the right-of-way too.
Okay. So we would have to, I guess to get to your point, we would have to amend or condition number 3, because if the way it's worded, it does say a 20-foot right-of-way, but the plans, or what he just showed up was a 60-foot easement. So I think the 60-foot easement is more consistent with what we're looking for. Yeah, that.
Yes.
so staff would have a question for our attorney here. Is, if this is an easement, Dan, are you saying this is a drainage easement dedicated to the city for that 60 feet?
There's currently a drainage easement that's going to be kind of reworked relative to the final design because our Newkirk right-of-way doesn't follow that drainage easement exactly. So I have to work with Rob relative to those pipes and that easement itself. But yes, there's currently a 60-foot drainage easement.
All right, so my question to the attorney is, if they're dedicating a 60-foot wide easement to the city, would it be, I guess the applicant would obviously have to agree to this, could there be a condition that in the future, if the city desired, they could dedicate the right-of-way to make the connection if the neighborhood to the north like petitioned for it? I know I'm beating a dead horse here, guys, but I think it's important.
Yeah, very, yeah.
I think the easement could be conditioned such that it would be allowed to be used for the purpose of right-of-way. There's certain circumstances where roads are, where right-of-way is obtained through an easement rather than fee simple ownership. It's unusual, but typically it's in situations where there's environmental concerns such as underground storage tanks and things of that nature. But I think something similar could be used here if it was acceptable with the applicant. Obviously, the acceptance of any easement would be, subject to future approval by the city, but that way it would potentially avoid the issues that have been discussed here regarding the gate. That's just kind of off the cuff, but those are my thoughts.
Dan, are you planning on having any water interconnectivity through to Newkirk at this time?
We are currently providing the allowance of water connectivity through Newkirk, yes, as well as through that Patterson to 17th Street as well.
So could that easement include utilities?
Yes.
Thank you.
Access, drainage, and utilities. All right. I think we can work out the specifics. Any other discussion on that connection? I mean, it sounds like the gate is the will of the residents and I guess council with the CD rezoning. So it's really about the particulars of, I mean, I have no concerns with the cross-section that I'm looking at here. I guess we can defer the gate and all that to the TRC.
Because I believe that applicant had mentioned that TRC had already talked or dealt with acceptability of the requirements for a gate for that. Is that what you said earlier?
Yeah, we've had one review and we'll work through finalizing, yes.
So this project's been to formal TRC already, or just pre-TRC?
Formal TRC last week.
Formal TRC last week, okay, all right,
I think it was last week. Was it last week?
all right. All right. I would make a motion, I'll stumble through it, to approve variance number 3, consistent with the cross-section listed as an emergency access easements, with the gate design to be finalized by TRC.
I'll second.
Any other discussion on that?
Would that include it as a drainage and utility easement?
Yes, that would include drainage, utility, and access easement. And I guess, per the city attorney's, Sean's discussion there, if there's some way to make that, be able to be dedicated as easement, or as right-of-way in the future, I guess they can do that.
I don't think we can change the easement designation, but the easement language could include for use as future right-of-way.
Okay, what he said.
Just for the point of discussion, would it make sense to require sidewalk on both sides?
I mean, if the area on the north side of Track 2 is going to remain a tree save area, and they have the pedestrian connection on the south side of, I guess that's Pattinson, like the actor, Patterson, whatever. Yeah, if they have that connection, I don't know that I see the need for sidewalk on both sides, but I'm not strenuously opposed either way.
Okay.
Was that not a condition?
We always shoot for sidewalk on both sides of the street where it can fit,
Okay.
I know there's been talk of the tree save, there was an image up here before. It looked like there's going to be clearing, I think it was in Dan's presentation of that road network where I don't see any tree trunks between the dashed lines, so wouldn't a sidewalk be able to fit?
So you're talking about a sidewalk on, I guess, the
The northern
northeast,
side,
yeah,
yeah.
the northeast side there. Yeah, to connect around on that side. I don't feel like that would be a real hardship.
I'll speak to our thought process on that a little bit as well. With that being designated as like a passive open space area with no real plan to have people walking through the woods, that's why we're trying to keep the pedestrian traffic on the southern developable side. If we added a sidewalk along the northern side, yes, it's possible relative to those clearing limits and the utilities. I will mention that relative to topography, once you kick that sidewalk out, it could increase those clearing limits relative to the tie-down grade and everything else, as there is a decent bit of topography through this tract itself, somewhere in the 15 to 20 feet range from the top to the bottom, more so than normal in Wilmington.
Well, I think that part of the benefit of it would be if someday there was sidewalk added along Newkirk, let's say it was added on the east side of Newkirk, then you'd have to cross back over the road to get to this sidewalk connection that you're making. Whereas if you had it on both sides of that emergency connection, it could just continue on around and service. I don't feel the need to have sidewalk along the north side of the Pattinson Road.
Okay.
Just it might benefit to have a connection on both sides of this particular easement. I think I made a motion, and I don't know that there was a second, but do you want to make that as a condition of a second?
I think I did second, but I will make that a part of my second conditioning, that both sides of the Newkirk easement have sidewalk.
I agree with that. Any other discussion on that? So we're voting to approve the variance with the condition added that they're adding sidewalk on both sides of that emergency access drainage utility easement. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries, so that's number 3. Which one's next? The residential collector street right-of-way width, that's number 4. Is that the Patterson, I gotta get that name right. Pattison, that's it. Does anybody have any concerns with that? And I guess, as we're discussing it with the tangent length, which is kind of right in the middle of that, I know that I believe that this has already been to the Board of Adjustment for specimen tree removal / save. So I would definitely support that. I don't really see a concern with the geometry of this particular layout.
I did have a question, maybe best for Dan, but in the justification, it says to provide a standard or greater horizontal curve through this area.
Yes.
And would there be a way to have that roadway approach the roundabout more horizontal to the screen to stretch that tangent area to get rid of that variance? Currently it comes down like at the 830 angle. If it came in at more of clock face, yeah.
Sure. We're working against kind of what the rezoning buffer was off of that property corner, causing that curve, as well as, and what I was talking about more than standard is the curve kind of at the top is I believe, slightly greater than the minimum 200-foot radius. That was done in essence relative to geometry. If we went with a smaller radius on that top side to increase this tangent, then that smaller radius would creep up further to the north into that tree save area.
And I'm saying the curve on the south, the one that approaches the roundabout. If that roadway intersected the roundabout more horizontally away from the buffer area, and you maintain the minimum curvature, would that not stretch that tangent a little bit?
I think the only way to make that possible would be to kick the horizontal tangent part further to the right too, which would cause some issue relative to the site layout, parking, areas.
Okay.
Because I believe that curve is more at the minimum city standard.
The one on the
Radius.
south side of the
Yes.
tangent? Okay.
Okay. So I do have a little, I don't know why I have so much of a concern. I see this as a major entry point to this development, this Pattison Avenue. And I'm a little torn on that being a private access easement. I don't know why. I mean, I'm trying to compare it to other roads on the south side of Independence or on the other side. I mean, this is fully residential in nature. It seemed like the other roads through the fully residential portions of the element were public roads. I don't know, I'm struggling with this. I mean, this is going to support a lot of the traffic of this development, and it seems like to make a continuous public roadway route through this development, it's difficult for me to see this being a public access easement.
Do we know, I don't know why it was proposed as public access as opposed to right-of-way? I mean, if it's going to be privately maintained, if the connectivity and the layout is there and they're bound by the approved design, it just really boils down to who's going to maintain it. And they're not required by frontage, I don't think. I don't know. I guess I don't have as much of a problem with it. I'm more concerned with the fact that it's going to be there, and not, you know, I don't want to see the hamlet be built and not have this connection also made. You know, as a preview, that's going to be probably a condition I'm going to suggest with number one, is that, you know, there not be any, you know, COs issued on the hamlet until both of these connections are built. Just because I felt like, you know, we got to have some connectivity with this project. If they're not going to connect the horseshoe back and they're not going to connect up to Parkway, I feel like they need to have something. But as far as the geometry and the layout of this, I don't really have a problem with it. But I hear you. Any other discussion? We haven't really made a motion on this one yet. 4 and 5 are very similar. They're both the same right away, but I've gotten in trouble grouping them before, so I'm not going to do that.
So I'll make a motion to approve variance number 4, the residential collector street right-of-way width as a variable width right-of-way due to the changing of the road width. It's going from a 2-lane road, and then it's introducing a landscape median, and then it's approaching 17th Street with multi-lanes. I think that's consistent with the request.
I'll second that. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye for approval of variance number 4.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, variance number 4 is approved.
I'll make a motion for item number 5 to allow the 73-foot tangent section along Pattison Avenue due to the tree save comments made, positioning this roadway in a way to retain as many of the specimen trees as possible.
A second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. So that's variance number 5. So I believe we've handled 2, 3, 4, and 5. We have 6, 7, and 1 remaining.
I'll go ahead and make a motion for number 6.
Okay.
Maximum driveway width at the property line is being requested 55 feet due to the right turn lane that's being required as part of the TIA along 17th Street. It's going to widen the asphalt width at the property line.
I'll second that. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, number 6.
Did want to discuss number 7, though. Dan, could you point up here where these connections for item number 7, maximum driveway width at the property line for the, going from a 30-foot driveway to a 42-foot? I know you mentioned
Yeah.
street-type driveways. Is that off of Barclay Boulevard?
Yeah,
Or
so
is that all
the entrance to Hamlet off of Barclay Boulevard, kind of where the cursor is there, and then also off of Bullis on the left.
So there's only 2 instances? Or I guess there's another one over on the Hamlet or on the Mosby side?
Yeah, is that
Right.
cul-de-sac one, yeah, where you're pointing now, is that part of the request as well, or is that compliant?
I believe I lumped it in there as part of the request as well, but it's obviously not as exaggerated as the other 2.
Okay, and it's mainly just because of the flares?
Yes.
Is there a reason they can't be flares?
You mean the reason they can't be standard?
Standard driveway?
There's not a concrete reason, it's just more so to keep in line with the development across the street, which was all part of the master plan development with multiple street styles on those too.
I know just reading journals and stuff like that, there's a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but there's value in providing that feeling that I'm leaving the roadway and now I'm entering a parking lot, so to speak. I mean, all those roadways are connected with on-street parking. It kind of looks like a very circuitous parking lot. I would think to consider that feeling to a driver that, okay, I don't need to be going 35 miles an hour anymore, you know. There might be value in that, but I was just, for consistency, so you're saying for consistency as what was done across the street, can you go back to your aerial, you're on Brian's on the controls here, but it seemed like you had an aerial photo of across the street.
Right.
In the element area, are there any, could you maybe pull up Google, Brian, to see if we could zoom in and see what was used entering those type of areas?
Yeah, I've always thought, and, you know, maybe you can elaborate, Dennis, you know, that the street styles are generally preferred when you're trying to, you know, get people off the road, you know, a little bit faster. You don't want them slowing down to basically no speed to sort of navigate an entrance. And I wouldn't feel like that condition would exist here, but I don't know.
You would feel like it exists?
No, I
Okay.
don't think
Yeah,
it does necessarily.
Right.
But, I mean, I can see how that,
So I'm seeing, Barclay Point Boulevard, and as it enters those parking areas, which is a circuitous road network around the buildings, I'm seeing the standard driveways. So I think that's where I'm leaning
okay.
on that one.
No, I agree. I agree. And I mean, it would also make sense considering that initially some of the road network on the point side, which is the north of Gallery Park Boulevard, were originally proposed as streets, you know, and then backed off to easements. So if they're easements, they wouldn't necessarily be needed. So I kind of feel the same way. I don't feel like this is going to be a big burden, but could provide some safety benefit to.
So I guess how would that be worded? Is that a denial of that request?
I think so.
Okay.
Can I point out one thing real quickly?
Sure.
So with that part relative to the Newkirk roundabout, that would be the one condition where the normal street style flare wouldn't work. I fully agree with the other 2 to the Hamlet, but relative to that tie to the roundabout, you wouldn't put in the normal street style apron with the flare ends.
I think there's some examples with a standard style. What was that?
that Azalea? No.
Azalea
What is it?
Landing, yeah.
Was it Azalea?
I think it would be possible.
Okay.
So if that's a denial, is that your motion?
Yes,
To
I
deny.
will make a motion to deny number 7, to not install street-style driveway designs coming off of the public right-of-ways throughout this project. To emphasize the need that you're entering the public roadway and entering a residential area with a lot of predominantly parking area.
Okay. Dan, you can probably just nod on this one. Does the same condition exist over on the Mosby side with the 2 entrances we're looking at here? There's a connection, well, that wouldn't make any difference because that's not right away. So that wouldn't, okay, never mind, forget it. Okay, well, I'm going to second Dennis's motion to deny. Do we have any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so motion 7 does not carry. So I think that leaves us with number 1.
Said you had some comments on it, or?
Well, no, I think that you know, I would like to make sure that we get connectivity, you know, I know it's being developed as one, but we've all seen plans change. I think that, you know, Mosby, which is the one that's over near 17th, it's directly adjacent to 17th Street, so it doesn't have the same, you know, driveway length concerns. The fact that the horseshoe is not connected, and the fact that the other road to Parkway is not connected does leave, you know, and then Newkirk is not connected for vehicles, does leave it a little bit sort of out on an island. So I would like to make sure that Pattison is built, you know, with Hamlet. And I mean, I think the intent right now is that it will be, but I wanted to make sure we have 2 points of connection in order to approve it. I mean, I would love for the horseshoe to connect back, but honestly, I don't know what that really gives you. You're connecting back to the same road. I would like to see the road, good Lord, Newkirk from the 2 roundabouts built. But, you know, if you've got good internal circulation on those, maybe that's not necessary. But, you know, for me to support it, I want to make sure that Pattinson's built with Hamlet prior to issuance of any COs. Anybody else have any concerns? So I guess that's my motion, is I will make a motion to approve, conditionally approve variance number 1 for length of maximum private driveway on the grounds that there will be future connectivity, good internal circulation, the condition being that the Pattison access easement connection is made prior to issuance of any COs for the Hamlet. And I'm not sure exactly how these are going to be phased. I don't know if that's going to all be as one approval or what, but I just wanted to make sure both of those connections are made.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor of conditionally approving variance number 1, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I believe, Brian, we also have to approve the plan. I assume that the adjustment, any approval would have to exclude the adjustments that they'll have to make for variance number 7. And we have a few recommended conditions by staff. I'll go ahead and make that motion to approve the plan with the adjustments made for variance number 7 that was not approved, and with the added conditions recommended by staff in the staff report.
Second.
Enter the discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you. That was a big one. So we got Abby back.
Mr. Chairman, I asked for clarification on one of the rulings.
Sure.
Thank you. My name is Matt Nichols. I represent the developer and the item that you just heard. And we just want to make sure we understand the condition on the approval of variance number 1. I was trying to understand the sequencing or what what your expectation is or what the condition is going to be for that connection to South 17th Street.
So as I understood it, this project was broken into 3 phases. There was the infrastructure, there was the hamlet, and then there was the Mosby. What I didn't want is if the road connection, Pattison, was approved as part of Mosby, I wanted that to be built up front so that when the units begun to be occupied in the hamlet, they had 2 points of access to use. So Pattison is built, and then the infrastructure, the 3/4 of the horseshoe that you're proposing to be built now, that's also built so that we had 2 points of access available to the residents as they move in.
Yes, sir. That was my understanding. Let me make sure that.
Oh my God, Jesus. Thought I turned that off. It's on airplane mode.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
I turned it on airplane mode. I don't know what else it's supposed to do. Okay, so we have item number 3. And did you?
I'm an employee of Cape Fear Public Utility Authority. I'm chief engineer. I'm aware that this is on the capital plan. I have no supervisory or managerial authority over the design, construction, or operation of this plant, nor have I have anything to do with this variance other than reading what's in the package today.
Outstanding. Okay, any concerns?
I don't have any, but I'd just give the applicant a chance to comment on that. As long as they're fine with Mr. McSmith remaining on the board for this, I don't see a conflict.
Okay. Will we do that now, or would we do that when we get to the applicant's presentation?
Are y'all okay with Mr. McSmith remaining on the board for this? Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay. We have staff presentation for this?
Good evening again, or good afternoon, sorry. The subject property is zoned industrial, contains 30.6 acres, is the location of the Southside wastewater treatment plant. The applicant has submitted plans for a small maintenance building with a parking area expansion located in the rear site. And it's a little bit difficult to see on this plan, but it's, I don't know if does the mouse work on this area back here. Land Development Code stipulates that the Design Adjustment Committee may allow deviations in our technical standards, and the technical standards in this case stipulate that a private driveway must not exceed 500 feet in length when accessed from a through street, and in this case, River Road would be the through street. So the applicant is proposing a private drive that is in excess, and I will point out this private drive exists today. They just want to add parking to their maintenance building in the back. That's all staff has at this time. The applicant is here to answer any questions you might have as well.
Any questions for Brian?
So just because they're requesting to modify their site is the reason that they have to request
Right.
for the
That-
variance?
That's a new parking facility, has to meet technical standards, although it's an existing driveway. Any new addition to that existing facility would have to meet that standard, so they need the waiver.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Does the applicant wish to speak on this matter? Understood. Okay. I guess,
I've got one question. This is a new maintenance facility?
It's really just an office space.
Sir, can you tell us your name?
Yes, my name is Michael McLam with Hazen and Sawyer. It's really just an office space for the maintenance staff at the plant. They use the chlorine building, which is up and to the left on this page, for their actual maintenance work.
Okay, so they don't have a current office space on this site?
I think there is a trailer located somewhere, but it's failing, and so they're looking for a new spot.
Okay, I work right across the street from it, and I'm like, well, where are these guys parking now? You know, just wherever they can, just out of the way?
Yeah, in the grass, yeah.
Okay, okay, thank you.
okay, thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing. Doesn't look like there's anybody here. All right, I will close the public hearing. Any other discussion on this? Seems pretty straightforward. It's an existing secured site. It's not open or available for the public. They're not increasing really the extent of the variance from the previous. It's really more of a technicality that has to come before us. Does anybody see it any different than that, or? All right, well, I'm going to make the motion that we approve the waiver as requested for the justification presented by the applicant, that being limited vehicle trips to the site, existing, an existing circulation, existing secured site. Yeah, that's my motion.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. We do not have a plan to approve on this one, correct, Brian? Just a variance?
That is correct. There's not a preliminary plan associated with this request.
All right, thank you. So the only remaining item, I believe, on the agenda is to adopt next year's meeting date and submission deadline.
Chairman Gordon, the only item I would note on the calendar is the December meeting. We went ahead and moved it up 1 week as to not conflict with the holidays at the end of December.
That's the one you have the asterisk by for
Yes.
the 13th. I got you. Okay. Now, did you move the submission deadline, the same, or did it stay the same? I don't know. I haven't.
The submission deadline is based upon the new proposed meeting date.
Got it. Anybody have any concerns with this? I guess we need a motion and a second to approve.
I'll motion and approve the Design Adjustment Committee calendar for year 2023.
I will second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you.